Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
I wish I would have been a little bit more confident in my abilities up front. My mentor, I mentioned earlier, one time said, "You know more than you think you know." And that has stuck with me, has built confidence in me, and I think is resulting in the growth of my own consultancy and my clients.
A quick announcement. As a listener of the podcast, we are making the Engagement Fundraising audiobook available to you free of charge. Just go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. As a thank you for listening, we wanted to give everyone free access to Greg's Engagement Fundraising audiobook that you can get on Audible or Apple Books for $15. Once again, just visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. That's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and we hope you enjoy Greg's book. Now, on to the episode. Sherry Quam Taylor is the founder and president of Quam Taylor, a fundraising consultancy group based in the Chicagoland area. Sherry's company really strives to work with nonprofits on a donor-centric mindset and has expanded into helping nonprofits during the hiring process to ensure nonprofits really are hiring people that align with the nonprofit and donors' interests. Without further ado, here's my interview with Sherry. We're here today with Sherry Quam Taylor. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Doing good. First, can you introduce yourself and your consultancy?
My name is Sherry Quam Taylor. My consultancy is actually out of the Chicagoland area, but privileged to work with people all over the country and world. And in essence, I grow nonprofits. And so I do a lot of capacity building, growth strategy, which leads to development consulting.
And your pitch on your website is Quam Taylor works with nonprofits who desire to increase donations and make their donors feel amazing in the process. What about your process is done with the donor in mind?
That's the key question, isn't it? I mean, and my answer to that would be really everything should be done with the donor in mind, and especially in the individual donor cultivation work that I do. When I meet executive directors on the premise of potentially working for them, the meeting always comes to fruition because they need more funding. And so great, I can completely help them do that. But often before I can dive right into solicitation training or strategies for campaigns, I often have to push pause and really back up the train and make sure all of the internal processes are running smoothly so that when funding does start coming in, everything is streamlined and the entire process as a whole is strong. And so things like how they set their annual budget every year. Is it really the true need of the organization and what they should be presenting to donors? All of these behind the scenes steps that may seem more operational or organizational in tone really lead to being able to sit in front of somebody and solicit for their best gift. And so really every part of that process should have the donor in mind at different varying degrees.
Has there been a situation where you walked into a client that really did need a radical rethinking of how they're treating the donors in regard to this?
I think everybody to some degree, I mean, we all can improve, right? Really what I'm usually targeting in that situation is moving some of the transactional elements of donor communications or even what that receipt or that thank you looks like. And so really making sure it's all pointing to a relationship that is strong and then is also focused on really what does that donor value in the organization. So, I like to say I've seen it all. Some people are doing, really great work, and they might just need to have some processes tweaked a little bit. And then some, a lot of younger organizations, no fault of their own, they've jumped in, they've focused on getting their program strong, all of those super important things, the people they're serving, and that's fine. But there comes a time when, okay, now we actually need to pause and to grow the organization. We need to think a little bit more about how we're treating our donors.
Now, when you get started with a client, what is kind of the most requested service asked of you?
So I'm really upfront when I meet with people initially about my process and my services. Frankly, that's just because it has worked for many organizations and they really are a tried and true process. So over the years, I've kind of developed this system of how I work with organizations. And there is, of course, an element of customization depending on what they do, their size, that sort of thing. But it's really taking organizations through about 10 or 12 steps that could fall into 3 categories. So how do we translate your organization's plans, your financials, your staff activities, and those key metrics into something the donor can digest and understand? And then how can we take your programs, your collateral, your messaging, and really position them so that donors can see what you need? The third part is really training leadership, usually executive directors, how to use all those tools on an annual basis. I work with organizations of all sizes, typically though with most groups, that monthly counsel service, which is really my core service, is typically what people select to go with. Now, one thing that has evolved and actually is pretty exciting over the last year and a half, early in my consultancy, I was working with a lot of small organizations under $1 million. I still do that today, frankly, because the majority are under that point. But a lot of the executive directors I was working with, they were just to the point where they needed to make that first development hire. Maybe because they themselves weren't a trained fundraiser, or frankly just weren't entirely sure what they were looking for. Was it a major donor development person? Was it more someone who was in-house working in the database? They weren't totally sure. And it's a stressful position when you are hiring a development person who you're really expecting them to transform your organization's funding. And so a few of my clients were actually starting to ask me, because you sit in these interviews, we aren't totally sure what questions to ask. Or a lot of people were coming to them where they had maybe were coming out of for-profit into nonprofit. Right now, I'm working with a real dynamite candidate that's coming out of the tech industry. And I speak that language. I was in for-profit for many years. I tweaked my process and really inserted some of these services to help organizations really understand what they need in a development staff member, and then help them with that hiring process. I'm not going and finding the person, but really being their thought partner through that whole process. I really have loved that. I realized I was doing that for quite a few clients over these past 18 months. And so now it's an official service that I have.
You mentioned your work in the for-profit sector. What was your experience prior to starting your consultancy?
I actually was a project manager and directed a group at an architecture firm. And I was originally a designer doing corporate work all over the globe, a large company. And so I am that both left and right side of the brain person. So I have the creative side and the able to see the vision and the kind of big picture, but then can quickly shift over to, and these are the 312 things we need to do to accomplish that.
Yeah. Now, what called you to actually start your consultancy and working with nonprofits in particular?
I had the opportunity to go on a trip to work with a nonprofit overseas. Long story short, had a real life-changing experience, had no even thought that I would change careers. I loved my previous career, was successful in it. In essence, I started working or volunteering, I'll say, almost a full-time job in the evenings. The offer always stood for me to join that organization, and eventually I did. And I just quickly realized, wow, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm managing all of these different aspects and was having a great impact. And so the organization was really almost in its stage of infancy. When I joined, it was small, about $300,000 annually. And then that year, we were able to triple the revenue. Yes, we had a great team here stateside, but also it really was the wonderful mentorship I had worked for great leaders over the years in corporate who taught me how to run a business well. When we grew so quickly, we also hired a development consultant who really I would call my mentor today, who was tremendous to work with, and everything just clicked for me. I worked for that organization for between 3 and 4 years, and I started meeting with other executive directors and quickly kind of realized I could help them too. They were running into the same challenges that I had just gone through. I thought, I kind of missed that juggle of multiple clients and that kind of hustle, if you will. And so I started my own consultancy to then come alongside other people who really were kind of facing what I had just gone through.
And how's that grown over the years? Is it just yourself still?
Mainly it's myself. I'm doing, the majority of the service work to my clients. When my client load requires it, I have another person who I hire as a contractor to just help me with some research or work plans, that sort of thing. I love the flexibility of being able to bring people on when I need them.
Do you have a favorite aspect of the work? Do you like writing or researching more than the other? Or?
I will tell you, writing, I do quite a bit of it. It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
I've gotten Honestly, my favorite is one-on-one client interaction, really rolling up my sleeves. I'm not the person with 30 clients. I might have 7 at the same time. And so I'm really digging in deep with clients. And so I really love that personal one-on-one. Let's figure out what the challenge is. Let's put processes in place. And it's a little coaching. It's a little therapist at times. It's a cheerleader. That's really what I find that I enjoy the most.
And what roles do you find yourself working with most of the time? Is it the board of directors or major gift officers?
The majority of the time, it is the executive director. And then, of course, I just mentioned the development director as well. But it's typically the executive director, various staff members along the way where it makes sense for them to come into a meeting. Always interacting with a few of the board members, happy to always attend a board meeting and really support the ED and in all the initiatives we're working through.
And what's your typical split of in-person work versus virtual work?
It's a 75% in-person and probably 25% virtual. It completely ebbs and flows. I mean, right now I'm working with a lot of groups in Chicagoland, which is where I'm based out of, but also have 2 clients in the South and 1 in the East right now. And so sometimes I'll look and, everybody's 30 miles from me. And then within 9 months, I'm all over the country, which is great. So I would say, though, for 2019, I'm trying to move into more of that 50-50. Mm-hmm. I can serve more clients when I'm coaching virtually, obviously, and just have a wider reach. So in a perfect world, it would be 50-50.
Now, on your website, I noticed a ready to grow checklist, and I clicked on that, and it looks to be a pretty cool lead capture thing on your website. Has that been useful? Have you tweaked it over the years?
It has. It's only been up there since I think about the summer. So I haven't had to tweak it yet, but I'm certainly, watching how people are using it. But the checklist is really, and I put it up there because it really is a sneak peek into all of those areas that we are going through as I work with my clients. So it's really those 10 to 12 steps in a broad brush stroke. And so I put it on my website because honestly, I want it to be a useful tool for people to print or download or obviously for me to capture leads. But I also wanted to use it to really broaden a prospective client's perspective of the types of things we'll be working on, really kind of already pointing them to understand deeper that every aspect of what you do affects development. So it's a broad list, but the topics are really pointed at helping that ED understand how when you pull this pushes over here. And so I knew it was good when I put it up, and within literally 2 weeks, I went to an interview for a prospective client and they had it printed out and in front of them and they had gone through it as a staff. I was so excited in that moment. I thought, oh my goodness, people are using that. So far, it's done what I really hoped it would do.
Now, do you find the website being the main source of your business, or how do you find new clients?
I don't find the website as my main point. It actually has been, and I'm very thankful for this, it's really been referral. I've grown my entire business on referrals from past clients and other consultants that just I network with. That's a timely question because I'm here in the 6th year of my business. I'd say like even my marketing has looked a little bit more like networking. And I think that's been fine up till now. But as I said, I wanted to move into this 50-50 model of in-person and virtual. So this year, in January 1st, I'm really going to dig in and launch into an additional service that is very similar to my monthly counsel, but it's a pure virtual service. I typically work with clients on a very recurring schedule. So, you're my Tuesday 9 a.m. slot. You're my Wednesday 1 p.m. slot. And sometimes I found that EDs were like, are you kidding me? You want me to meet with you every single week? I can't think about that. And so this is really for groups who are probably under that $1 million mark, and don't have a full-time development staff, but they really desire that accountability, that coaching to start putting these growth principles in place. And so I'm hoping that really takes off, and my website will actually be a bit of a feeder for that, which just hasn't as much in the past.
And what was that foundational work you did when you first started your business to get the initial clients to then get referrals?
I was, working full time, and I'm not a super risk taker. Looking back, I'm shocked I did this.
Yeah.
I went part-time for the summer and I thought, I'm going to try this. If I can get some clients, then I'll jump. And so I went part-time, which just got me the time to go out and talk to people. I put some feelers out to some of my well-networked friends and colleagues, and quickly got an account and just really clicked with this person. And frankly, I still stay in touch with them today. Just one of those clients that I really clicked with. It just spiraled, to be honest, to where I realized, okay, now I actually have to quit my full-time job because I have a full client load. It was very quick. I said, this is what I want to be doing. I can really add value to these conversations. And so it felt really good, and I made the jump.
And I noticed on your website, speaking is something you do offer. Is that something you're trying to get more into?
The consulting work, I mean, it's my bread and butter. I do love it, but speaking is certainly an area that I'd love to grow. And I have actually quite a few opportunities booked even here in early 2019. Some really interesting things going on with associations or just different groups where they're bringing together cohorts of executive directors who just really need that time to be able to have some confidentiality and be in a room and really talk about issues that they're facing. And so I love speaking to those types of groups to where it's 20 EDs or less, and I can really share with them, how I did it, how I see other people doing it, where I see people, the pitfalls I see people really struggling with. And I love being in the room and working with leadership because I've been in their shoes and I can really understand when they're stressed about something and say, here's what I did, or here's what I've seen work. And so I have been trying to speak more often.
If someone was starting out, trying to start their own business consultancy, what advice would you have for them?
If someone was kind of on the fence about starting their consultancy, I would say jump. I would say do it. It's not as scary as even I thought it was when I did it. And I would say you can make a living. It will be rewarding. I wish I would have been a little bit more confident in my abilities up front. My mentor, I mentioned earlier, one time said, you know more than you think you know. And that has stuck with me, has built confidence in me, and I think is resulting in the growth of my own consultancy and my clients. The other advice I give to a lot of entrepreneurs or people starting their own business is regarding that billing structure and remembering the value that you're bringing to the table. I really feel like a lot of my success and early success was my commitment for my business. This is not for everybody. I don't bill hourly. I bill on a monthly retainer. And so I work with people for probably 4 months, 6 months. And it just has allowed me to think a little further out about my business and to be able to plan in a stronger way. And frankly, I do feel like it's helpful for the client too, because at the end of the day, they're looking to me to help them drive change. And so that means discipline. That means accountability. When they know they're paying me every month and I'm on their doorstep, I feel like the change happens in a quicker way. I think it supports myself and the client in a stronger way.
Now, lessons you've learned just operating a business, what have been some of the biggest ones? You mentioned billing as something you definitely noticed that you needed to adjust to monthly retainers.
Yeah, I was very careful, and I still am today. I kind of have those planning days where I'll just press pause and I'm like, let me just look back at my numbers. Let me just look back at how I found those clients. Let me look at what percentage of my clients are in the city, in the suburbs, in the state, in what region, and really being reflective on what have I enjoyed the most? What do I feel I've been the best at? And then what has also grown my business and kind of my life mission? And so it's helped me pause and look at the data and then move forward in an informed way. That's what I tell my clients to do. Look at the donor data. Let's segment. Let's drive our strategy based on data. And so I guess I'm taking a little bit of my own advice in that vein.
Now, you run the business mostly just yourself. What kind of tools, software, and services do you end up taking advantage of to, organize your business and get the work done?
I run pretty lean. I mean, of course, I've got all the standard QuickBooks and website and all those sorts of things. If you asked me what my favorite tool was, it would be Excel. I mean, I use it every day. I'm in it all day long. I love it. I'm doing my work plans, my schedules, my sales forecasts, my proposal grids. I'm also creating templates for then my clients to be able to look at their own numbers dashboard. So I use Excel a lot. Secondly, I guess we can call this a tool, but I walk into a lot of meetings with one of those giant easel, like Post-it pads that's huge.
Yeah.
And a fresh set of Sharpies because I'm a visual person. And sometimes, honestly, we need to just sketch everything out. We need to lay it all out in front of us, dig in, map out their plan. And there's really something about that collaborative energy that comes out of that. And so sometimes I'll warn people, okay, I'm coming in with the 3 foot by 4 foot easel. Don't be afraid. We're just going to, put it up on the wall. It always adds a kind of a fun element to a meeting too. So those are, probably two of the main tools I use in running my business.
You mentioned earlier that you like to schedule out this time, this day, I meeting with this client. What is your typical schedule like?
It is very disciplined and frankly, just because of what you said. And so I'm scheduled out a few weeks, usually just because my service times are scheduled out with my clients. And I am that disciplined, person who likes to schedule. But I think also I could try to get the majority of my client meetings in that Monday through Thursday slot. I also, in the week, I work in those prep and follow-up times. Those times I do have to write and do some research. And so I try to save some times within the week, and then especially on Mondays and Fridays to do those sorts of things, but as well business development and networking or speaking engagements. I work a little bit on the evening and weekend. I think just working in nonprofit requires it. Like this evening, I actually have a fundraiser for a client that I've been helping her with, and I'm attending. And so any weekend or evening work usually looks like fundraising events or attending an occasional board meeting.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and Engagement Fundraising by Greg Warner. In this quick break, I want to remind everyone to go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. This offer is only available to listeners of the podcast. It's our way of saying thank you for listening, and we really hope you enjoy the book. Once again, go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to take advantage of this promotion, available only to listeners of the podcast. Now, back to the episode. Well, with that, let's get to the lightning round, just a series of quick questions and answers. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Avoid emotional pricing. Price your work based on your value, your expertise, and frankly, the change that you can bring to the organization.
What book would you recommend to those getting started and why?
This is kind of funny, but I read, I was in my late 30s when I started my consultancy, a book called Encore Career. And it's because I had met with a colleague who was in her late 50s who was wanting to kind of retire, I'm doing air quotes here, but move into that second career. But it was really about like making a legacy, leaving a mark. It asked some really good questions about what I really wanted my business to be and how I wanted that to impact my personal life. So there were a lot of transferable concepts in this, even though I wasn't really the target audience because I'm not ready to retire.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
I subscribe to the philosophy of the early bird gets the worm. So I am up early when it's dark, before the kids get up, when it's quiet, just to get that quiet time of reviewing my calendar, mentally going through all my meetings for the day, making sure I have everything printed. I also put every single thing I do on my calendar, all appointments, all to-dos, personal and professional, schedule a haircut, call that client to set up something.
What's the best under $100 purchase you've made in the last month or so?
It is probably most months. I love like a good fresh notebook with some new fancy pens to go along with it. So I do buy those regularly.
What's your favorite monthly service or subscription you're signed up for?
I just got on the Calendly bandwagon. After watching everybody else use it, I said, okay, fine, I'll do this. So far, so good.
And what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I wanted to be a criminologist when I was younger. And so I still get sucked into these big trials that are on the news. I'm like, what are these details? So I feel like that's like a really weird thing that's in me and I have never pursued.
Desk or car, what would you clean first?
Definitely my desk.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee. A little bit of cream, a little bit of sugar.
And what do clients never ask you that you wish they did?
I wish they would ask me what they should stop doing. I find that many people I work with are they're just stretched too thin. They're wearing too many hats because oftentimes they're doing a lot of activities that they see as important and maybe had gotten them to a certain point in their organization, but perhaps these activities aren't really contributing to the next phase of their organization.
And what are the best nonprofits doing right?
They're embracing the fact that they are a business. And in more ways than not, they do need to run like a business, be in those weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual schedules and rhythm that successful businesses are in.
And what charities do you admire or support?
I have a passion for educating girls all over the globe as well as, right here in Chicago as well, providing education and safe spaces for girls in Chicago. And so right now I'm working with a handful of those groups, which I'm really proud to call my clients. Groups like Girl Forward, Tutoring Chicago, and By the Hand Club for Kids.
And where can people find more information about your services?
Yeah, I'd love for anybody to hop on my website. So it's my maiden name plus my married name. It's QuamTaylor.com, QUAM Taylor.com. That's where you can find me. Fantastic. Thank you for your time today. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks, Tim. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. I also wanted to remind everyone to visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. Once again, that's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening.